The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
The Palm Beaches are over 8,000 miles from Kenya, Africa. But yet here in Western Palm Beach County, scientists are trying to save an incredible species from extinction and return it to its ancestral home. On this episode, we'll visit a place that is trying to save this iconic and endangered animal right here in the Wild Palm Beaches.
Ecotourism is big business in Palm Beach County. From lions to loggerheads, our resident wildlife population is one of the things that makes the Palm Beaches a special place to visit. Aquatic adventures let you see our majestic sea turtles and tropical fish in living color, while our zoos, wildlife parks and natural areas give you an up-close look at everything from rhinos to alligators. It is here that nature is on full display. It's like nowhere else in the world. As one of the largest counties east of the Mississippi, we have lots of room to explore the wild animal encounters that are seemingly endless in the Palm Beaches. Ever wished you could swim with dolphins or get up close to a manatee? In the Palm Beaches, you can. From the Florida Everglades and the Loxahatchee River to the Intracoastal Waterway and the Atlantic Ocean, take a walk on the wild side and discover the great outdoors in a tropical paradise. Join me, James Currie, as we discover the Wild Palm Beaches.
Now you might ask yourself, what is a bongo? Stick with us and you'll find out. The story of the once abundant bongo is a troubled one. The range they used to call their home has largely disappeared, leaving less than 100 animals in the wild today. There are currently two recognized subspecies of bongo, the mountain or eastern bongo and the lowland or western bongo. This antelope is the largest, heaviest and most colorful African forest antelope. Females are usually more brightly colored than males. Both males and females have spiraled lyre-shaped horns. The large ears are believed to sharpen hearing, and the distinctive coloration may help bongos identify one another in their dark forest habitats. In 1994, mountain bongos were thought to be on the brink of extinction. But over 2 decades ago, an idealistic young American named Paul Rilo set out on a mission to save the bongo right here in the Wild Palm Beaches.
We're talking to Kathita, and Kathita is an ambassador for the mountain bongo. She's almost a year old, she's 10 months old, and she's a calf that had a rocky start. She had a very, very old mom who unfortunately died very suddenly a few days after her birth. And so this cute little baby needed a surrogate mom. So our team stepped in and we bottle raised her, and she's done very well. She's quite sweet. But her name is actually important because she's named after the Kathita River, which flows from Mount Kenya to the village of Meru on the northeast slopes of Mount Kenya. So her brothers and sisters are going to be returning to the very same region that she's named after.
As space for nature disappears, the need for captive management strategies targeting critically endangered species grows. The Rare Species Conservatory Foundation's facility in the Palm Beaches operates as a living laboratory, allowing the development of reproductive husbandry, management and long-term conservation programs.
How can you not love bongos? Like, look at them. Kathy's an ambassador for the species.
That's the famous bongo stink eye. That's what the bongo stink eye looks like, right there.
I feel it in my soul. My name is Shalene Angwanyi. I am a wildlife veterinarian from Kenya. I'm currently working with the Bongo project to be able to increase the number of bongos that we have in our country, in their historical ranges especially, and just to make sure that they have thriving populations there as well. So it's nice that we're able to learn from such foundations and conservation organizations, and in that way we're able to take that back home and work on our own populations. It's very important for the country, for the community members, because Kenya, of course, notices that our wildlife are our heritage, and they have a very important economical and social and cultural value to our country. So having the bongos back into the country, into a thriving population, is definitely going to be very important for the communities and for the species as well, having them thrive in their natural populations. RSCF is definitely a model foundation that has been supporting and propagating the populations of bongos in Florida for over 30 years. And I'm sure I speak for not just myself, but the bongos too. And a lot of wildlife conservationists and wildlife lovers across both Kenya and here and across the world, that they are doing an immaculate job with the species, and to see how great the body condition of these animals are, the environment that they're thriving in. We're just truly grateful for all the work that Paul does and the rest of the RSCF team, all the animal carers, every attention that they're giving to this species. We are all truly grateful for their beautiful work.
First rate. I think it's Emmy winning. Definitely. I'm not sure who's going to win the prize, whether the statue goes to the bongo or to the veterinarian, but it was a job well done.
She's like, I'm done. Go away.
The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
The largest and most endangered forest antelope, the mountain bongo, is a famously rare, shy and beautiful flagship species for Kenya's high mountain forests. And here in the Wild Palm Beaches, the Rare Species Conservatory Foundation continues to help in saving this emblematic species.
James, you ready to see some Florida bongo?
Definitely. Let's do it.
Let's do it. We got a couple of bulls sparring over here over some females. They're still at it.
Still at it. Oh, look at them here.
They're going to go at it again. Watch this. Oh, wow. Check them, dude. Go get this. Watch out. Wow.
Our radiator's okay, so we're good to go.
That was crazy. Jeez. They're aggressive, aren't they?
Well, they're powerful.
Yeah.
And so these guys were going at it pretty seriously, but if they really were trying to kill each other, we would see a lot more body slamming than that.
They didn't like you breaking that up at all.
No, but it does knock them back a peg, and this is what happens during the breeding season, when the females are receptive and the boys have to establish their rank. So,
Well, testosterone is sky high right now. And
these
we're
are
gonna-
not pets.
These are not pets.
These are not your barnyard family cows.
Wow.
They're starting to wear each other out now.
Jeez.
They're getting everybody all stirred up. Usually this sort of behavior is something we see in the morning, not when it's hot in the afternoon like this. But my guess is one male probably gave the other one a dirty look or got in a place that he shouldn't have been, and the other male's putting him in his place.
That was nuts.
Very powerful. And now we see The loser is way far away and the victor is closest to us, and he's looking very proud of himself.
Wow.
He's vanquished the other one. So.
And so you break it up because obviously, just because they're such rare antelope, you can't afford any injuries to these animals, right?
Well, when we see it, and it's one of those things where it's something we can get in the middle of because we don't want to risk any injury, we do. But of course they do this when we're not around.
Right.
And so this is certainly not their first argument. And the males are massive, as you can see from their huge horns and their musculature from the shoulders forward. They have tremendous force. And what they do is they lock horns and push against each other. And usually what happens is as soon as the lesser male turns and runs, it's just not worth the effort to chase him down again.
Right.
So they'll engage and lock horns for as long as they can stand it. And then it's a pushing contest. And as soon as one is pushed further, then it's like, okay, you got me today, and I'm out. How's that for an introduction to the mountain bongo? It's docile and peaceful demeanor.
God, that was insane. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Africa on safari, and that's the kind of thing you expect once in a while witnessing from a safari vehicle, and here we are right out west in the Palm Beaches, and it's right next to us on a 4x4. It's crazy.
We didn't get any front end damage, but he smacked us pretty thoroughly. And usually they hit you with the flat of the horns. If he hit us with the sharp pointy bits, then it can do a lot of damage. But he was really, I think, more disappointed with us playing referee than anything else.
That's crazy.
The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
The Rare Species Conservatory Foundation's facility in the Palm Beaches operates much like a living laboratory, allowing the development of reproductive husbandry, management, and long-term conservation programs linking captive breeding with conservation efforts. These techniques ensure species on the brink of extinction like the mountain bongo have a chance to recover, whilst at the same time continuing efforts to protect and preserve their habitats in the wild. So Paul, this is an amazing habitat for these mountain bongos. Tell us a little bit about the project that you're doing here with them.
This is an example of what we exist to do, which is recover critically endangered species by figuring out first how to preserve them in the wild, but then to supplement that effort with captive breeding and reintroduction. So what you're looking at is 30 years of effort to bring the mountain bongo to a point of sustainability where we have enough animals to repatriate back to Kenya and ultimately to rewild them back to the forests of Kenya. This is one family group, and it's really an astounding experience as we've just seen, because these guys all know each other, right? These are animals that are very intelligent, they're very sentient, they're very social. They have complex relationships, some friendly, some not so friendly, but the point is they function as a family unit. And that's the key to putting these species back, because once you lose that fabric of sociality, it makes it very difficult to recover species. They just don't know how to act as animals anymore. And this isn't a zoo. We're in a semi-natural habitat. Yes, we are enclosed, but these guys, as we've seen, are allowed to behave just as wild bongo do.
It's fascinating, and it's quite astounding to think that there are more mountain bongo in captivity today than there are in the wild, which is why Paul's project is so vitally important. Can you tell us a little bit about the decline of the mountain bongo in the wild in Kenya?
Well, the mountain bongo story is a long and rather depressing one, because we have this spectacular antelope. It's charismatic, it's a flagship for Kenya's high mountain forests. And over the last century, what we've seen is that forest has been degraded. In some cases, it's not been protected sufficiently. And these iconic species like mountain bongo and black rhinoceros, which used to occupy the high mountain forests of Mount Kenya and the Aberdares, have disappeared. And even as that has happened, we've seen that captive breeding can offer a solution. But a lot of that has not worked as well as we'd like either, because these animals have been exploited for collections and for zoos and for exhibit, rather than looking at the potential of putting them back. So what we're doing is we're really integrating what we can learn from them and using that information to reintegrate them back into the ecosystem where they belong. Florida is simply a tool to make sure that that happens. And our challenge with our Kenyan partners, namely the Kenya government and county government and local NGOs and community forest associations and local people, is to make sure that when this recovery effort happens, it isn't just a one-time thing. It's a process that becomes part of everyday life. It becomes part of the way you think about your wildlife and your native animals and your pride of Kenya. So it's a tremendous privilege to be a part of that and to be ambassadors for a program, just as these animals are ambassadors for their species. It's just an amazing opportunity, and it might be our last best chance to do this. I think we're on the right track. We've gotten this incredibly rare animal to the point where we've got nearly exponential growth. And if that can be replicated in Kenya, then you've got an engine to drive the recovery process, because first, it's numerical. You can't save an animal if you don't have it. And then secondly, you can manage that resource, repopulate areas where it's disappeared, figure out ways to enhance the genetic diversity by mixing in animals from other populations and so forth. But first and foremost, we've got to have them. We've got to have the numbers. What's tragic to me is that as the world becomes more occupied by people, we are partitioning and fracturing habitat so that animals are occupying less and less space. And when that happens, it makes it more difficult for gene flow and population flow to occur. And the end result is that animals go through bottlenecks and they go through localized extinctions. And our goal here today is to make sure that we don't lose this animal. There's no reason for us to lose this animal. My goodness, we can culture them, we can nurture them, we can give them safe spaces. And on the other side, the most important side, we can build the capacity for Kenya to preserve its wildlife indefinitely. And that's just a powerful, powerful message for the species and for the whole ecosystem. This is a yearling bull. He's just a year old, and probably not even quite a year. And he's already a good chunky 400 some pounds. You see he comes up and licks my hand. These are not tame animals, as we've seen, but nothing bad has ever happened to him. So he has no reason to distrust me. He's never been darted, he's never been harassed. This little baby is probably about 6 weeks or so.
And so you mentioned they've got nothing to fear in here. Now, when they are reintroduced back in Kenya, and what is the process to get them acclimated to predator awareness and all that kind of thing? Are they obviously not just taken to Kenya and released into a forest?
That's right.
There's got to be some kind of acclimation process.
Well, the recovery process, we always say it's far easier to save things in the wild where they still are, rather than trying to put them back after they've been lost. In this case, because there's only really one living population of wild mountain bongo left in Kenya, and that's in the Aberdares, and it's a very small population. We don't want to tamper with that. We have to create a center, a hub, an engine for bongo propagation that will then enable the offspring and their offspring to repopulate these areas. So the rewilding process actually takes generations. The animals that go back to Kenya will not be released into the forest to fend for themselves. They will be the breeding base population for another population that will also be, and over time, over 2 to 3 generations, these animals will gradually be removed from human care. They will be habituated into wilder and wilder and larger habitats until they function as wild animals. And our role is to protect that base resource, that founder population, so that it's strong enough to do what we see here, produce lots of animals. Some will be better for reintroduction than others, but the point is you'll have choices, you'll have options. Rewilding is not a one-time thing, it's a sustainable thing. So every year, once the population reaches a certain size, which in my estimation should be between 150 and 300 animals, then every year we can think about returning 20 or 30 bongo to the wild without fear of this program collapsing or slipping backwards. There will be some losses. It's tough. It's tough to put an animal back. But if they are sustainable, and if they are breeding well, and if they are robust and healthy, then we'll see the kind of production in Kenya that we're seeing here. The great thing about this program is that the sanctuary to breed and reestablish bongo on Mount Kenya is doing the same for black rhino. So we're checking two boxes, two famously rare animals, very, very important for national identity and pride, but also representing what conservation can do. Bringing these guys back from the brink. 30 years ago, we feared that this creature was extinct in the wild, and the game was just about over. So to be able to see this, to see mom washing her calf there with what's likely to be maybe her son from last year standing by, and these little youngsters all curious and inquisitive and happy to be in the family, this is magical stuff. We don't profess to be experts. We don't profess to have all the answers. Far, far, far from it. But what we're seeing is something that is possible. And if this is possible, then it is certainly encouraging that Kenya can enjoy this kind of success. It's a sobering reality, right? I mean, we're at the very cusp of losing species which you and I grew up thinking would always be here. And now we have a generation of human beings on this planet who will likely witness the disappearance of these important animals. They're important not only because of the intrinsic value they bring to life on Earth, but because they represent what we've done as a species, the impacts we've had on the planet. Recognizing that much of what is happening in nature, it's not just happening on our watch, but it's happening because of us. And to the extent that we're here, we must do everything we can to undo the harm and to give these species a chance. To their credit, many species just need a little help. We don't have to have them on life support indefinitely. They don't have to be propped up with artificial means. These animals clearly want to reproduce, and given the opportunity, they proliferate. And they've gone through terrible bottlenecks. We may only have a handful of unrelated genes comprising all the bongo in captivity. And yet, some 15 or 20 bongo generations from the wild, we see this. That offers hope. But my take-home message from a lifetime of doing this is that we'll never be able to do enough. It's far bigger than each of us. It's not about us, it's about the biodiversity and the species we hope to save, and that we can all play a role in this. We're here. Each of us alive on this planet is here to bear witness to this. And that should be compelling enough, right? To do something, step up, do something. Help in any way you can. If you're a big organization, think of ways of doing the big things while we still have time. The little things are great, and yes, every little bit matters, but these are the big things. And we may not have a lot of time left to do the big things.
The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
So why the Palm Beaches for saving bongos?
Well, it's one of those things in life that you look back and you think, how did we get here? I came to Palm Beach 34 years ago to start a conservation program, not knowing if it would work. And the reason was geography and climate. And I thought, well, we're in the gateway to the tropics. We're so close. We're within the Caribbean hotspot, biodiversity hotspot. So this is where the action is. We've got the Everglades. We have features that enable conservation work to be done that can't really be done anywhere else in North America. And I also thought the proximity to Palm Beach, there's a philanthropic base here of support. People that have come here perhaps for like-minded reasons, thinking this is where nature can thrive. All of those features enabled us to start experimenting with what I would call the tactical side of species recovery, the problem solving. Ideally, we want to solve all this stuff in the wild, right, with wild animals in their country of origin. But what Palm Beach affords us is the opportunity to really dive deep into what makes a species tick, particularly these critical species that we know we're going to lose unless we have managed or conservation breeding programs. This is one. We would lose it if not for conservation breeding programs. And where are you going to do that? Outdoors, year-round. Yes, we have a threat of hurricanes, but overall, it's a pretty benign environment and the vegetation is suitable, and this is a browsing species. There's lots for them to eat, and anyway, it works. Did I think it was going to work initially? Had no idea. Many of the species that we work with here fall into that category of, well, let's try. Let's see what we can discover that might move this in the right direction. And if I could say anything for this, why you should discover Palm Beach, it's that it's not just for people, it's for wildlife too, and that we can become a center of excellence for science and nature and the research that saves nature. The institutional network in South Florida is excellent. We have some great minds and some great people here, and we also, I think, have a deep intellectual understanding of what it means to be part of nature. Every year we get to see nature at its most ferocious in terms of the hurricane season, but we also get to see migratory birds. We have native wildlife. We see all of the intersections of conservation, good and bad. And what I'd like to focus on with programs like this is there's a lot of good.
Working with Paul has been one of the most enriching experiences that I've had in my career as a wildlife conservationist. Paul is probably one of the most passionate, thorough, smart, committed conservationists and researchers that you will find. He dedicates his life fully and entirely to the wildlife that he works with, and it's both a privilege and an honor to work with him. I have certainly learned a lot from him, and not only in terms of the science and the way to do conservation, but also in what it means to be committed to these animals, to giving these animals a better future.
With the world the way it is, think of something that's bigger than you and throw your life at it. Love it, call it your job. When you look at these animals' faces and they look back at you, you know, everything that they're going to be, their entire future relies on us now. And that's an incredibly sobering sentiment, because we've gotten to that point where this is it. This is the last best chance they have. Because if we don't fix this, if we don't solve these problems, they're gone, and that's forever.
Working together, we can change the world, one day, one moment, one action at a time. As members of the global community, we all have a responsibility to preserve and protect the natural world that surrounds us. Wildlife conservation and environmental preservation are crucial for the health and well-being of our planet and all of its inhabitants. Without a healthy environment, we cannot thrive as a society. Unfortunately, many of our actions and practices have had a negative impact on the natural world, and it's up to us to make a change. By getting involved in wildlife conservation and environmental efforts, we can make a real difference in the world. Thanks to Paul and his team, there is now renewed hope for this iconic species right here in the wild Palm Beaches.